Ready?
Let's rock and roll. Good morning. Welcome back to the pod. Matt, Kim, Peter, Saddington. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning.
Good morning, guys.
We are experimenting with dropping a different time.
Oh, is that right?
We have been doing 5 a.m. And although I appreciate all the 5 a.m.ers, I feel like we do a little bit better when we upload just a hair later.
Really?
Yeah. It was a little aggressive of a goal to get a big audience at 5 a.m.
The best time for reels I found is 9 to 11 in the morning, Eastern Standard Time. If I post a reel too early, it doesn't get playtime. But if I post a reel at about 9 o'clock, 9:30, that's when it's going to go up to like 2,500 views, something like that within the hour.
It's because people go to work and like, now that I'm supposed to be working, let me check out Instagram instead.
Exactly. Let me knock out all the unreads.
Yeah,
that's how it works.
Yeah. So we've been pushing it back to, I think we'll experiment with like 9 or 10 a.m. See how that goes.
I think that's probably pretty smart.
Maybe, and maybe we'll try even later one day.
We'll just keep trying it and see what the data says. If the data says it's a better time to drop, then let's do it.
I feel like,
by the way, we're still getting good views. By the way.
Oh yeah. I mean, the audience is growing. So if you're new to the channel, appreciate you. Thank you for being a part of our week.
Smash the like button.
Yeah, the response has been great. We've been picking up people every single day.
We've been hearing some really encouraging feedback that we're being served to people that haven't seen us before.
Yes.
Which is unusual because usually we're hearing stuff that we're not being served. It's like, yeah, so that's nice.
We may be breaking through.
Do you think so? We're breaking through the embryo, the veil here?
I think the algorithm is like, at first they're like, we don't know what these guys are. Because they talk about family, they talk about politics, they talk about social issues, they talk about maybe too broad.
And they're picking up all our biometrics, which means they're Asian, they shouldn't be talking about this stuff. They should be Hello Kitty and shit.
Exactly. And they're like, wait a second, like it's kind of interesting. And people are listening and our retention is really high, our listen time is really high, and we get a lot of people that come back. So I think at a certain point they're like, all right, like
maybe it's that survivorship bias or that perseverance bias where YouTube's finally like, most people quit after 10 weeks, 10, 16 weeks, and these guys, they've persevered past 3, 4, 5 months. So maybe we'll finally give them a little bit of a leg up. Maybe YouTube's on our side. Who knows? YouTube, we love you.
Sure.
Please keep serving us up. keep serving us up to everybody, YouTube. Thank you, Massa.
So today, this is not something we've done before, and Peter was reluctant. But I want to talk about Peter today.
Okay. Sounds good.
Because we film and we record an episode every single week, and we talk a lot about me.
We haven't missed a week since January.
We missed one.
Oh, that's right. Oh, yeah.
For the move.
Yeah, for the move.
We've missed 1 week. Since January, we record every Thursday, or we upload a video every single Thursday, and we've run it like clockwork. Good job.
So we all guys, all we do is text each other on Saturday, Sunday, or Monday, and we're like, hey, when are we gonna get together? It kind of works out. Small teams are agile.
But we rarely talk about your background, your history, and kind of the life experiences that you've had that kind of mold you to be who you are. And I think it's important because when people listen to us and they're giving us a good hour every single week, they're hearing both our perspectives. And on some issues, we agree. Some issues, we don't agree. But I think, and I feel like people have a good understanding of wherever I've come from. I think it's important to kind of dive a little bit deeper into your history also.
That's fair.
I think that adds context for everyone. And I get it all the time when people message me. Hey, I love Peter. You say that all the time.
Why? That's the question I asked you offline. Is why? Well, I'm just an extra piece on the mantelpiece.
Well, I think number one, it's that you're definitely smarter than I am.
I might
smarter than a lot of people.
I might sound smart. Let's put it that way. There's a lot of different versions of smart. The street smart, book smart, etc., etc.
You're more educated than I am.
We can agree on that.
So I think that, I think that adds, and you're a little more animated and funny than I am.
Maybe it's because I have a screw loose. Maybe that's why. Maybe you still have a screw that's tightened.
So I'm sure there's a lot of people watching, listening, going, who is this Peter guy?
Okay.
So let's start there. Your name is Peter Saddington.
Yes.
You do not look like a Saddington.
I don't.
The reality is that you were adopted when you were very young.
Mm-hmm.
Can we start there?
Yep.
How old were you?
So I was 11.
11
months.
11 months old.
Yep. So about a year old.
And you were adopted from Korea.
I was adopted from Busan, South Korea. Yep.
And when you came here, so they adopted you, they found you in Korea, and they brought you over.
That's right.
Do you know if that was through and I'm going to ask a lot of kind of direct early questions just so we can set a little context.
Yeah. I don't mind sharing.
Do you know if that was through a service or how?
So I'll give you the backstory. So my parents, so whenever I say my birth parents, I'm differentiating between my parents and my birth parents. So my parents are the ones that I have now, and they could not conceive in their early 20s, and they could not conceive for years. And they had heard about an opportunity to adopt through a company, a nonprofit called Holt International that's based out of Oregon. And Holt International, Harry Holt, was one of the first individuals to go to Korea after the Korean War, because as history, you guys well know, in history, after the Korean War, the entire Korean peninsula was just ravaged. It was completely destroyed. And for context, Korea is literally half the size of Florida. So that's the size. And 80% of Korea is mountainous. So the vast majority of their population is smashed in these cities, in like Seoul and Busan and these types of things. And so they met with the Holt International, and they said, we want to apply. We want to adopt a couple kids because we can't conceive. They went through the entire social work process, which was really lengthy back in the 70s, late 70s. And I mean, it's all paperwork. So it's like really, really tough. It's not as tough these days. But, and they settled on a price. So $34,000.
Wow, you even know that?
Yeah. So I was $34,000 in 1979.
That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money. It was like $100,000 now. And what they found is they found that myself and my brother were up for adoption. So we were abandoned by my birth mother, left on train tracks, and they were picked up by a social worker. And then we were moved to an orphanage in Seoul. And so my parents went through the paperwork, applied, paid $34,000 times 2 for two boys. Yep. And they flew us over in 1982. So
there is no buy one discount?
No, buy one get one free. No, that would have been really nice. And what I think what's interesting is back in the 70s, the paperwork was so scant, and so we found out later, and I can talk about this a little bit later, but all the paperwork was completely just made up, and so my name, my birth date, all of that stuff is completely made up. So I don't know how old I really am. From studies in international adoption back in those times, you're looking at essentially a differential of about 3 to about 9 months at the max, usually, that they're off. And you'll find a lot of adoptees who have their birth dates the first of the month. They say, why is it first of the month? Because they just guessing your birth date. So they're like, oh, it kind of looks like a summer baby, July 1st. And so it's fascinating that I've met a lot of adoptees who I've ruined their lives.
By telling them this?
I'm like, when's your birthday? They're like, oh, October 1st. I'm like,
it's not
your real birthday, bro. and like, so true story. I was at a conference in Vegas a couple years back, and I met a wonderful adoptee. We hit it off. She was one of the organizers. I was one of the speakers at the conference. It was a Web3 conference, and we hit it off. We started talking about it, and I just, it was after party, after the I think it was the second day, and I looked at her and I was like, so when's your birthday? She was like, oh, why do you want to know? And I was like, I'm just curious. I mean, you brought up the adoption thing, and you asked me about my last name. And she was like, I think it was October 1st. And I was like, it's not your birthday, girl.
Sorry to break it to you.
She physically and mentally, like that night, maybe it was the drinks too, she just downward smiled.
Yeah.
And it's not her fault. It's more my fault because I shouldn't have brought that up. The timing was bad. But having a birth date to most people is a sacred day. For me, early in my youth, knowing that my birthday was just made up. Like I never gave two fucks. So I haven't celebrated my birthday I think since 7.
Really?
Yeah. After my parents told me, they're like, yeah, it's probably not your real birthday or whatever. It's just like, well, I don't give a fuck. And so that's created in a sad trajectory because I have 2 kids is I just don't care about birthdays. Maybe it's a cope, maybe it's a defense mechanism. But when people ask about my birthday, the answer always is, it doesn't matter. It never mattered. And they're like, oh, you're old. Everyone says, bro, you don't know me. It really doesn't matter. Like I could have been born in August, September, October, November, December, or January. I don't pick a date within that 6-month differential, and I probably was born somewhere in there.
So did you and your twin brother ever have that discussion? Hey, why don't we pick our own birthday?
No, my brother went the full banana, which is banana is yellow on the outside, white on the inside. He went that route fully, and he just didn't give 2 fucks about being adopted or any of the culture stuff. I think the type of individual who loves to dive deep into stuff, which is why I love conspiracies and I love ideas. For me, it was an absolute life journey of who are you? Where did you come from? I went back to Korea for a time and learned the language as best I could. I was semi-fluent when I was there because I'm a fast learner. But for me, identity has always been something that I care about in trying to live out who I think I am in this shell of a body. So, but my brother, he couldn't care less.
That's really interesting because you guys are twins, and people say that twins have almost a telepathic connection to one another.
Absolutely, they do.
But
absolutely, they do.
The way you handled the situation was completely different.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
I think I couldn't tell you. I think there's a natural disposition. I think for him, it was all about just here. It is what it is. No need to worry about it. For me, I think the origin story is always something that I've always cared about because whenever I've interviewed people, whenever I talk with people, like one of the worst questions you can ask in the beginning of a conversation is, "What do you do?" Don't ever ask that. That's a terrible question because everyone has a pre-planned answer. Well, what do you do? Oh, I'm a VC or I'm a startup entrepreneur. Or I work at Accenture. I work at Home Depot, and then I do. It's like fuck off. That's boring. The better question is whenever I meet someone for the first time, it's always tell me your story, because that gives them a latitude of where they want to go. And I didn't ask you what you did. Tell me your story. Like, what about you? And if they sometimes, because usually people are taken aback by that question. Like, when was the last time you met someone brand new and you had a moment and you're standing next to them with a drink and you're like, hey man, who are you? Like, no one asked that question. Yeah. It's usually like, what do you do? Oh, I'm a DJ, or I'm here, I'm hanging out. Right. So when people start fumbling over that, then I follow up with a question. It's like, tell me about your youth, or tell me about how you were raised, or tell me about a value that you care about. And it's always these really intriguing questions that I get into amazing conversations with people about. And so for me, origin stories are always important. I think it sets the baseline for context of who you are, your mental models, your worldviews, your philosophy, where you came from, right? Probably some of the intrinsic copes and psychological coping mechanisms you've created because of the dysfunction that you've had as a youth, or because of the suffering you've created, or the poor choices. And so I'm hyper aware of people, and I love watching people. So for me, those types of questions have always piqued my interest. So I think that's really kind of my foundational basis is I enjoy digging in and understanding, whereas, I don't know about my brother now, but at the time he was more of, I don't care, it doesn't matter.
How old were you when you were like, because when you're young, and my conversation with other adoptees, usually when you're really young, you're not as aware, right? Because you're so young. How old were you where you were like, I need to know more, I need to dive deep? Like, when did kind of the light bulb go off in your head?
So it was about 7, 8, or 9 years old when it really, the light bulb went off. I can remember when I was in New Jersey. We were living up in New Jersey at that time. And I remember having a moment where I was crying in my bed. I think probably 7, 8, or 9. I can't remember what age. And my mom came in, and we just had a great conversation about it. And I was just like, I don't know who I am. I don't know who my real, and you don't have the words for this, so it was offensive the way I said it to my mom, and that she took it in stride. But I remember clearly saying, because this is seared into my mind, as I looked at her, I said, I don't know who my real mom is. And she didn't flinch. She didn't take offense to it. But it changed something in her for me to say that. And her response was, "Well, I'm your real mom," which is the right thing to say. Which is the right thing to say. She's not wrong. But you know, at 7, 8 years old, you lack the vernacular, lack the words to really convey kind of what you're feeling and the distance you have. And that was a moment that really, I believe, set off my journey of wanting to find my birth parents, wanting to understand my heritage. Fast forward to 18 years old. So when I turned 18, I was legally an adult, so I could actually petition for my files from Holt International and from the social working group, as well as the orphanages out in Korea. So I petitioned. I got the documentation that intrigued me because a lot of it was blank or not filled out, or it didn't seem right because, you know, just chicken scratch. And so that took me to hiring a private eye to go out to Korea, hire a private eye for $5,000 to find my birth parents. And he ended up finding my birth mother. This was this is a couple decades ago now. But he found them, and so then I took a trip out to Korea for 2 weeks to meet with the private eye, meet with the investigator, meet with the I think 4 or 5 orphanages, because you don't know which one it was. And I went out there for 2 weeks and found my birth mother. And was able, and my Korean was good enough so I could communicate with her. It was one of the most surreal moments. I could show you pictures, but meeting my flesh and blood, my birth mother, meeting the 2 uncles, one that I look like a spitting image of, meeting my cousins, my half brothers, meeting an entire extended family. I remember having dinner with my birth mom, her 2 brothers, their gaggle of kids and relatives, and it was just this amazing kind of closing the loop of you found them. Now you've made lifelong contacts with your half brothers, emails and all that stuff, and now I could finally understand where I came from, what was the backstory from it. Fascinating. I'm into racing, as you well know, love cars, as you well know. That was the reason why we were put up for adoption. Is my birth father at 16, our age, 17 Korean age, had impregnated my mom, who was 14. I know, 14. So my birth mom's only like 13, 14 years older than me.
Yeah.
So when I hang out with my birth mom, it's like I'm hanging out with a homie. Yeah. It's like really, like the dynamic is really like super positive, upbeat, and chummy, but there's an undergirding like connection there that it's almost impossible to communicate what that feels like. But there's this knowing, there's this shared understanding that we have. She smokes like a fucking chimney too. She's just like chain smoker. So when I was out there, I used to smoke so much with her. Cigarettes, by the way. So my father at 16, 17 years old, apparently was like a sajagnim or like a kwajagnim or something like. He was like second or third in command of a part of the mafia there in Busan, and he was boosting cars. And at 16, 17 years old, he had like 25, 30 people working under him. Like he was that much of a boss man. So like those stories galvanized me because it's like, man, the motherfucker was a hustler. Yeah. Like I get it. Like I got that from my dad. Yeah. The other bad thing is, what was he doing in the gang life? He was boosting cars.
Yeah. Which is why you love cars.
Yeah, he was doing them illegally. So according to the stories, him and his crew were able to boost 20 to 50 cars. I don't know about that, but let's just say 20. 20 cars a night. They could boost these cars and strip them and sell them in China within the night before 6 o'clock in the morning. Like they would rally together at 10 and they'd just boost cars all through the night, bring them in, and they'd have like 7 or 8 guys who were just taking cars in, stripping them within an hour, like the speed and efficiency. So anyway, you boost cars long enough. So he was doing Grand Theft Auto before Grand Theft Auto was cool. But you boost cars long enough, you eventually get caught. So that's why he was caught. If you boost in that many cars in Korea at 16, 17, not only are you tried as an adult, but you get life.
Yeah.
So he's doing life in prison right now. And so he knocked up my birth mother, and then he got arrested, went to prison. And so as a 14-year-old, girl who's having these twin boys, it's just like, well, what do? Well, you can't tell your brothers, right? So she was hiding away from her brothers. So her brothers didn't even know I existed until I showed up. So it was this huge like potential shame opportunity for my birth mother. But the two brothers took it in stride. But yeah, she was very apologetic, very regretful about how she, I guess, essentially threw us away. Let's just cut to what it is. Threw us away, and she was just really blessed and felt just amazing that we had survived, that we had been adopted, we had moved from Korea to America, we made something of ourselves, and so one of the most precious moments that I have remembering my mother at the time, my birth mother at the time, is when I was able to give her, the very Korean, like, cash. I was able to give her cash in an envelope. And that was a very touching moment for her because she never expected that she'd have a son that's, made it in America who can give her, I give her a pretty big amount.
Good amount of money.
Oh, it was one of the largest I've ever done. But it was the heart thing that I needed to do, I think, to close that loop. So I've had a long period. I would say all the way up to 26 is when my adoption journey kind of ended in 26, and that's when I was like, I know my uncles, I know my birth mom, I know my cousins. Like we got emails, contacts. We can do Kakao Talk and stuff like that. Yeah. So I write them. My writing Korean is far better than my speaking.
I got a million questions for you because I think it's fascinating. I think people who are listening are fascinated. First, I want to just go back a little bit. How old were you when you were like, holy shit, I don't look like my parents?
Yeah, I was about 7, 8, or 9.
And is that what triggered your...
Yeah, it was
that awareness moment, right? You have no idea when you're a kid.
It's like when your balls drop.
Yeah.
Right, when you go through puberty.
Yeah.
It's like, shit, your voice has changed. Something's changed. And it was one of those moments where I was just like, there was no racism back in the 80s, that way that we see it today. Like there was... I was in New Jersey. I was in Trenton, West Windsor, Plainsboro, Princeton Junction. So it's kind of more of the ritzy area, but wasn't super racist or anything like that. It was just one of those days I think I'd come home and I was just like, man, like it's absolutely fundamentally clear when you show up for Parents' Day that we don't look the same.
Yeah.
And I think it was just this shocking moment where it just, there was this It's like when you go in, you're in a video game and you pass an area and it's like achievement unlocked. Well, what achievement did I unlock? What the fuck happened? Like, what's this new thing on my shelf? This little trophy. It was one of those moments where it's just a regular Tuesday probably, and I just awoke and I was like, you know what, Mom, Dad, yeah, we don't look the same. And we had some really interesting conversations, and that's what triggered them to start sending me to Korean camp, a sleepaway camp every year.
Really?
So I used to go to a 1.5 week sleepaway camp, Korean camp up in New Jersey, and then over in Oregon, for probably all of middle school. Yeah, all of middle school and all of high school. I went to this Korean camp, and I eventually volunteered as a counselor when I think it was senior year in high school. That way I could learn about kimchi, I could eat bulgogi, and I could finally learn about Korean culture.
Is that something that you wanted to? I mean, were you searching for that community?
No, but I loved it.
Or was that your parents were like, hey,
my parents were
we want you to. Oh,
they were aware enough that this is an option that we should probably look into. And Peter is the one that's more interested in this heritage stuff and the culture stuff and the history stuff. And so I loved it. I mean, I loved going to Korean camp because everyone looked like me for the first time. They're all speaking a language that was a little odd to me, but it was one of those things that I enjoyed picking it up. I enjoyed learning about it. So Korean camp. We don't have sleepaway camps these days. People are too scared to send their kids away. Like back in the 80s, parents used to send kids away for weeks, sometimes months.
Yeah, just go. Have fun, be back.
Dude, in the 90s, my parents would send me to Santa Barbara for 3.5 months over summer. They'd be just like, go get the fuck out of here. Go live in Santa Barbara. Go play soccer. So that's what I did. But Korean camps, my parents were really, really attuned to the idea of, hey, we should be good white parents. We should open up our kids to, their culture. And so they sent us to these Korean camps, and I absolutely enjoyed it.
Isn't that interesting, though? Like, when you're young and when you're very young, you have no idea and no context of race.
No, you don't. Racism is taught.
Yeah, but as you get older, and then you start realizing, hey, like, not everyone looks like me. Not everyone in my house looks like me. I want to be around people that look like me. That's because I think that now because we're going to move out to the more rural part of Georgia. Right now, where we live now is an extremely diverse area. We're going to move to like the white part of town, right? Where I think 90% of the whole area is white.
It's probably safer.
It's probably safer. But my daughter is going to be like, huh, is she going to one day be like, damn it, I kind of wish I was around people that look like me? Is she going to go through that, even though she's not adopted, is she still going to go through that kind of self-reflection type cultural like inner battle?
No, I don't think so. I think what she'll struggle with is what any other child goes through, which is the usual rite of passage of identity. Who am I? What's my value? What's my purpose? What am I good at? Who is my friend group? She's just going to go through all that stuff. I think adoptees are unique in a way that their beginnings were abruptly terminated, the trajectory they were supposed to go on, and they were, recycled or, repositioned or pivoted to this other timeline in reality. And that timeline doesn't include their natural born parents. It includes surrogate parents, essentially. And that, I think that is, and I've met it's interesting we're talking about this. I can unpack this forever because there are so many people on the adoption side who absolutely abhor adoption and absolutely hate adoption. And these are Korean adoptees, for example. And because they were raised in abusive households. They were raised in households where they were abusive or they weren't supportive, or maybe they were racist, or maybe they were poor. And it was so interesting to meet those people because I had a relatively great upbringing, and to meet adoptees, especially when I moved to Korea, who were anti-adoption, living in Korea as expats, learned the language, like assimilating themselves. And it's like, well, you're basically back where you started, you're full-blood Korean. And they're like, yeah, we should completely stop adoption. It's like, but brother, you benefited from that system. That the reason why you're able to be in Seoul, make $200,000 a year as a consultant or whatever, is because you didn't go through the orphanage system. Because most kids in Korea, they go through the orphanage system, they age out at 18, which means you're on the streets. Now, knowing what my father was, my birth father, bro, I'd be fucking king of the streets. I tell this to my wife. I'm like, bro,
DK right here, DK.
dude, I'm telling you, man, like with my hustle and my grind, like if I wasn't adopted and I aged out at 18 onto the streets of Busan, dude, I'd be a fucking sajangnim. Dude, I'd be fucking top G. I'd be top G. I'd be running games, dude. I'd be moving weight. I know it because that's my hustle, man. So I get it. I would have been fine.
When you went, while you were young, your parents had their own kids.
Yeah. So my parents adopted my brother and myself. They still couldn't conceive after that, so they decided to adopt another one. So I have a younger sister.
Really?
Who's adopted from Seoul.
I did not know that.
She's 30.
I knew you had a sister, but
she's 36 now?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah, age yourself right there.
Oh my gosh, dude. Yeah, I think it might be 37. Maybe 38. Holy shit. 37 to 38 now. Damn, she's that old. She's only 4 years young. Anyway, so they adopted her, and then they still couldn't conceive. And so they were thinking adopting another one, and then apparently the Lord opened up the womb, and they had a natural born. So I have a younger brother, and then right after my brother was born, I think 19 months later, my younger sister was born. So I have two brothers and two sisters. So I have a twin brother, then I have another adopted sister, and then I have two natural born to my parents.
What was tougher, your parents adopting another child, or your parents having their own child?
Well, the age gap between myself and my younger brothers and sisters was large enough where I was in high school or in middle school when they were coming into the family, and I was in high school when they were in elementary school. So that age differential between high school and elementary school,
big difference.
The rift is very similar to anyone else that has that type of age gap within siblings. And so I didn't really take much of an interest in my younger sister who was adopted, my younger brother, and my other younger sister. I just didn't take much interest in them. And I think there was also a bias towards not needing to take interest in them because I had a twin brother who You've met twins. Like they're like two peas in a pod all the way up until college, and then they split. And that's kind of how we were. We were two peas in a pod all the way up. So we never had to deal with being lonely. We never had to deal with not having a partner if you wanted to play a video game or you wanted to play a soccer game or throw catch. And so I think my childhood was, I couldn't ever look back at my child and say that I had a bad childhood, because it wouldn't be true. I had a great childhood, and and I think in most cases it was because we were the oldest, number one, but number two, I had a buddy who looked like me, who understood me, and you talk about that connection between twins, completely real. Like, so people talk about synchronicity, and what is synchronicity? Synchronicity is when random events suddenly converge at a common moment, and it's like you were thinking about Donald Trump, and then 5 seconds later Donald Trump calls you, like the craziest odds, right? That's what synchronicity is.
I'm thinking about him, he's not calling.
Yeah, well, clearly it's not it's not a synchronicity time, clearly. But so we would have tons of moments like that, uncountable amount of moments where I would be thinking about something, and then 15 seconds later he'd come over to me and be like, bro, we need to do this. It's like, fuck, I was just thinking about that. Or, we need, I can think of 1,000 times on the soccer field, because we played soccer together, where someone had like hit me or fouled me, and in my mind I'm like, I'm gonna fucking tear that guy up. Next play, my brother's running halfway across the field, fucking ninja flying into that guy,
knocking him down,
and knocking him the fuck down. Yeah. And it's the unsaid, like, those moments where I cherish those moments. I really do, because those moments show that there's a greater power, there's a greater connectivity to the vast world around us that we can't see.
I mean, that's like a multitude of identities to identify with, right?
Yeah.
You have your adoptee identity, you have your twin identity, and then you have your Asian American, like, entrepreneur, like, identity.
Yep.
What do you think is your biggest identity?
Well, my biggest identity is I'm a child of God. I'm a child of the Most High. Some people call him God. Some people call him Yahweh. I like to call it the divine matrix. I think we're all interconnected, so that's my terminology. I like to call it divine matrix. So I'm a child of God. I have a great purpose on this world. The Lord has made it clear to me that I have a suffering to endure on this life. And how I've interpreted that is that the Lord has given me the opportunity to experience deeper and greater sufferings that most people don't get opportunity, which you don't want that. But I think I could say this clearly with you here, is that through our greatest sufferings comes our greatest triumphs. And through our greatest sufferings come clarity and understanding and purpose beyond that transcends any type of worldly, tangible thing that you can think of. And so I feel that I'm on this planet for a purpose, and the purpose is to experience the entire spectrum of life. And so I embrace it as much as I can.
That's such an interesting dichotomy, though, isn't it? Like, we say it all the time, reduce suffering, right? We want to do things to reduce our suffering, make our lives more efficient, more better, and remove things that don't add value. At the same time, it's that suffering that adds the most value.
It does, yeah. And the suffering often,
so, like, damn if you do, damn if you don't.
Well, yeah. I mean, you just embarked, for example, on a brand new experience of suffering. You have a new daughter. This suffering is going to last you the rest of your life, but it is one of the most worthy suffering. It's one of the most worthy things that you could do. It's your progeny. It's your future. It's your family tree. No matter what you achieve in this world, Matt, your greatest achievement, frankly, has already been conceived. It's your daughter. She's going to take your namesake. She's going to take your blood, and she's going to move that into the eternity, hopefully, God willing. And it's fascinating to say that, because so many guys, especially younger guys, right, than us, and we went through this phase too, where it's all the hustle, the grind, earn, get the Lambos, get the cars, get the houses, get the Rolexes and shit. Right, I get it. But at the end of the day, man, like, nothing that you achieve in this world is going to be greater than how you raise that child. How I like to say it, I've tweeted about this before, is you know that you've succeeded in life if your kids actually want to hang out with you.
Interesting.
I can tell you so many men of industry that I've met, Matt, their kids hate them. I don't give a fuck about what you've been able to achieve, bro. Your kids hate you. like there's nothing you can say to me that can convince me that you have succeeded in life. If your kids don't like you, Like, let's be intellectually honest. Your kids are going to see the Matt Kim that no one else sees. They're going to see the real you. They're going to see the you in how you love on your wife, how you treat your wife, how you treat other people. They're going to see you in the moments of weakness. They're going to see you when you're talking shit about someone else. They're perceptive. They're going to pick up on. They're going to know the real Matt Kim. That's, their appa. That's their daddy. They are going to see the real you. And after seeing all of that, all the imperfection, if they still want to hang out with you, you've done a good job.
And if they don't, it's really telling about who you are.
Oh, I don't know about Joe Biden and his relationship with his kids, but we've read some stuff. I don't think his kids really enjoy him, especially after what he's done with them in showers and shit. Anyway,
Had to go there.
I had to take a jab. But so my greatest success story is going to be how I help these kids move out into life. And when I'm 70, 80 years old, are they going to want to still hang out with me? That's going to be telling.
And that's tough, right? Because, like, how do you ensure that your kids like you? You don't want to people please them.
You're not going to people please
just
them.
so that they like you. At the same time, like, you want them to respect you. You have to be sort of a disciplinarian. You can't just let things fly because they lose respect for you. At the same time, if you push too hard, then they resent you. It's such a fine balance. You have to play with your kids.
Well, you have to play with your kids, but your engagement must change. So I have a tween now, and basically from 0 to 12, it's directives. Now into 12, 13 teenage years, it's options. And so that's how my wife and I have been shifting our parenting style away from directives to options. Like, what I mean by options is there are multiple options in this decision, but the decision is yours. And so we will help guide you through these options. We will, hopefully help you not make the poor ones, but we're trying to help you grow in personal responsibility, personal accountability, and life experience. And the next phase after that, which I'm not there yet, thank you, I'm happy where I am now, but the next phase after that is moving from directives to options to coaching is the final stage, where it's like, look, there's nothing else I can tell you because you're not under my roof anymore.
Yeah.
So it's mostly just a coach. And remember, coaches don't play. So you're not playing in their life. You're not taking over their life like some, overbearing ajumas or, Korean mommies like to do. My wife's like that, so I'm
Good luck.
I'm gonna have to pull her back. It's like, no, you don't have to go with them to see their dorm for the third time after you've helped them set it up. This type of stuff. You don't need to be that overbearing mom. It's more of a coach. It's like, hey, go roll your own. Let me know how I can help.
Dude, can I tell you, every night when I put my daughter to bed, I tell her, make sure you make a lot of money, and when you do, have a finished basement for me because I'm living with you forever.
I think what you really mean. Oh no, I'm not. I mean,
I'm never leaving you.
I've had guys shoot me straight to my face, Matt, and have said when we're talking about raising kids, boys versus girls, and stuff like that. And I've had literally probably 2 or 3 people, guys, men of industry, who've literally looked me in the face and said, "I'm not worried about my daughter." It's like, why? And their answer. It's shocking, but at the same time, like, I get it. And the answer was some permutation or some form of, I'm just going to marry him off. Like, I'm just going to marry him off. They're going to marry into some rich dude or some well-off-to-do guy, and they're going to, do the family thing. And I think that's not the right attitude to have, but I can understand that.
No, I get it.
I can get it.
She can do whatever she wants in life, as long as she has a little pocket somewhere for daddy to live.
Yeah.
I'm so attached. I don't want to leave.
Bro, you should throw another bun in the oven.
Like, if she goes to college and if she wants to go far away, I'm just going to have to get an apartment in that city.
Oh, you're just like my wife. I'm
going to be the worst.
My wife is the one that's like, if my kids move out, go to these colleges and we're moving. I'm like, all right, move in.
She's like, if my daughter is like, I'm going to UCLA, I'm like, guess I'm getting a place in LA.
You're going to be that guy?
Got to do it.
Oh, man.
And you don't have to come see me every day. I just, like, if you need me, I'm very close, and I'll do my own thing. I'm not gonna be like, play with me every day or hang out with me.
We're gonna have to move that podcast wherever it goes.
But I want to be like 15 minutes away if something goes wrong, and maybe it gets better as you get older.
I get it because my first child was a girl.
Yeah.
So everything that you are emanating to me, everything that communicating to, I 100% understand you, Matt. Like, I was there too. Like, when I just had a girl, and I didn't have my son yet, it was just my daughter, like, my princess. Nothing, like, you know how fast I would be on the draw? And, like, because I always wear concealed carry, so especially when I was living downtown Atlanta. There's my daughter now. Yeah, you can show that. I don't mind showing that. That's on Instagram, so that's public. Some people tell me not to show that stuff, but my daughter is a junior Olympic archer.
Awesome.
She won her first tournament back a couple months ago, and then she broke her elbow playing volleyball.
She'll be back.
But she'll be back. So, but my daughter loves archery, and my son is chip off the old block. He likes to race fast. He's a national racer in go-karting. He's currently driving two-stroke, and so I'm the constructor. I'm the one who builds his machines so that he can go fast. Right. Will, thanks for showing those two pictures. Those two pictures pretty much I could say would be the quintessential purpose that I have in life currently, is to ensure that these two kids have as much options in life as possible, where I can find things that they're passionate in and take interest in and are willing to grow in that craft. And my daughter has been really great at volleyball. She learned about archery, and that became like her thing. My son, ever since he was just a sperm, all he cared about was going fast. So we got him in cars.
And that's interesting, right? Because a lot of people think that you either have to, if you give your kids too much, you're spoiling them. If you don't give them enough, like, why are we working hard if you're not giving them opportunities? Finding that balance between providing opportunities and opportunities to teach and learn versus just giving them everything they want. It's a really fine line. People have difficulty struggling with that, right? Yeah. For example, my daughter came and she was older and she's like, Dad, I really need this. Everything in me is going to be like, all right, I have to do this for her, right? Like, what am I here for? At the same time, if you just say yes to everything and give them whatever they want, they're never learning. How do you balance?
So how I balance it is I look at opportunities as the gold, and it's the quality of that opportunity. It's the quality of the asset that I'm giving them that is usually lower on the totem pole. So, for example, when my daughter first started out archery, I'm like, girl, no problem. I got you. Whatever interest you're interested in, I got you. Here's the cheapest archery set that'll get you started. Like, it was like $40. And that is how I balance the overburdening and overgiving. It's like, you want to get interested in X or A or B or C or XYZ? No problem. I got you. Let's try it. But I'm not getting you the $5,000 riser set with the fucking carbon fiber, limbs, so that you have a $12,000 setup on day one. You don't even know if you're going to like it. And so, same with my son. When my son got into driving for the first time, we got him a used piece of shit, frame and wheels and a used engine, the cheapest possible. It's like, if you can't enjoy this, you're not going to enjoy the $20,000 setup. So that's how I balance it. Now, the struggle is you and I both married Korean women.
They like to spend that money.
Korean women are gonna be like, Peter, you buying them a piece of shit? It's like, okay, so wait, my
You're gonna pay this credit card bill, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, but remember, I was raised by white parents, and they took this very similar. And I remember I was also one of 5 children, so this is a bigger family than usual. So ain't nobody getting all the piece of the the bigger slice of the pie here. So my first car was a 1986 Chevy Celebrity that had 500 miles on it that we got for like $200. And I had to maintain it and do all the oil change services, change the tire. Like that lesson I will never forget. My dad said, "You're old enough now to drive. You're picking up a clunker." So, and I tell you, man, that '86 Chevy, I still wish I had it.
Do
you still wish you had your first car?
I did.
There's something about the first car, even though it's all fucking banged up, it's all busted, it's in terrible shape. The Chevys back in the day, the roof lining used to drop on you. You remember? You know what I'm talking about? But man, so many moments of growth in life happened in that car.
Yeah.
Like, I made out with a girl in that car.
Whoa.
And this is and in these 86 Chevys, it had the bench seats. Like if the driver moves up, the passenger moves up, right? There's no separate. So like that bench seat up front, you could move it all the way back.
Got some play.
That makeout session though, bro. Primo for makeout session.
Oh, I don't want to think about it.
I think I got to second base.
It's funny how cars kind of identify and make little markers of history of your life.
Truly. Cars have been. I mean, it's clearly in the blood, because and I going back to the adoption story. Some people ask me if I care about meeting my father, my birth father. The reality is my birth mother and the private eye couldn't find out which jail he was in.
Really?
So we spent 2.5 days going to a couple jail / penitentiary / holding areas in Busan, because that's where they originally were. But we couldn't find anything on any manifestos. We couldn't find, where he was. But the shorter answer is it doesn't bother me as much because I am the man. I am the spitting image of my father, pretty much. I mean, I can tell from my birth mother and the way that she acts, the way that she communicates. I'm like, girl, I would have like you were a hot ticket back then, Like I get it. Like. And everything that my birth mom told me about my birth father, like we were on the degrees of separation were so razor thin that I feel like I'm channeling a lot of my birth father anyway. So it never really was a big deal to meet him. But I will tell you, if I could meet him, I would love to sit down and just hear his stories about stealing cars, boosting cars, about what it was like to live in Korea in the 70s, 60s and 70s during, after the war and being rebuilt. And what was that like? I'm sure he's got some amazing jail stories too. If he's the gangpei, the gangster that I think he is, then he's probably running inside game at a prison.
If your dad is anything like you, there's no way he's just kind of hanging out doing nothing in jail. There's no way.
He's probably hyper productive in that jail. He probably has the most influence in that jail.
Yeah.
He's probably like the Don.
Super active.
Yeah.
Okay. You have an opportunity to ask him one question. Only one. You find him, they'll give you enough time to just ask one.
I have the question. It's not a good question. It's a question that I wrestled with early on. It's mostly because I was young and emotional. I thought this was something that people cared about, and it's a good emotional heartstrings question. And the fact that I know this and it's coming to me so fast when you asked it is very simple. The good question I asked is, why did you leave? That's not a good question.
But it's the one that
pulls on heartstrings.
It's the one you've been thinking about your whole life, because it was right there.
Yeah, fair enough. Peace, right? It'll always be there. And actually, let's close the loop. My greatest psychological ailment, every single adoptee struggles with this, whether you think so or not. You're not immune to it. You're not fucking stronger than me. If you're an adoptee, every single adoptee struggles with abandonment issues.
Yeah.
Period. Full stop. And how that manifests itself in psychosis for different adoptees is always going to be different. For me, how I translated the abandonment issue is I can never rely on anyone, which is why I think the work ethic that I got from my father and the hustle mentality that I got from my father made a lot of sense. Because for me, it was, I can never rely on you. In middle school, high school projects, I was the one that's like, guys, fuck off.
I got this.
I'm going to do everything. It's like, you sure? Trust me, it'll be great. I can't trust any of you guys. And I would never use these words, but it's like, you're not going to pull through. I can't rely on you. You're going to abandon me. You're going to not live up to your side of the deal. And my greatest psychological sufferings in life, in my youth and as a younger man, and even as moving into becoming a man and moving into my 30s and now 40s, that struggle will never leave, right? Whenever I go in business, there is something there. It doesn't pop up most of the time, but it's still there. There's something in the back of my head. It's like, is this guy going to fuck me? And if you're a good businessman, you're thinking that anyway, but the psychological ramifications are different. For a regular businessman, they're like, is that guy going to fuck me? I got to make sure I make this contract solid so that if he does fuck me, I get recompense. There's some reciprocity. There's maybe some clawback, right? All these types of things. For me, it's, am I going to be able to not fucking go crazy if he abandons me or doesn't follow through, and am I gonna fucking want to kill this guy?
It's deeper.
It's
a little bigger.
It's a soul wound.
Yeah,
right. That's what I call it. It's a soul wound. And so if you're an adoptee, you struggle with abandonment issues. How that manifests itself in your psychosis and your daily life is really based on your personality, your character, and how you've been able to overcome that through experiences in your younger years.
I feel like if you're an adoptee, then you have the abandonment issue, and you have this yearning for a sense of community.
Yes.
Wanting to feel like you belong. And that's the good and the bad, because you may look for community in places where you shouldn't be looking for it.
Exactly.
You may get lost by something that says it's shiny and says, we accept you. And all of a sudden you're like, okay, I'm going to go with them because they accept me.
Right.
The other side is, if you find a community that you really, truly align yourself with and you feel like you belong to, you are super helpful and super able to contribute in a very big way.
You're probably one of the biggest volunteers for that purpose or that community, right? People rely on you because that is your cope, is that you are the most reliable because you have a scar that says that other people were unreliable to you, so therefore you overcompensate with reliability. I get it. For me, I was so burned by communities, and I think I burned out in my, probably by mid-20s, I was burned out of communities, and it probably had something to do with my introversion as well, is at probably 26, 27, I was just like, fuck it. I will never attach myself to any community, which is why, like Free Thinking Podcast, and which is why, like you met me about that time, which is why I've always been kind of in and out of communities and groups, but you'll never see me as a staple in that group, as someone who's like, yeah, this group's been around for a long time. You should go talk to Peter. He's been part of this for 7. You'll never hear that. You'll hear, who's that guy? Well, Peter's been here for like a decade. He comes and goes as he pleases. It's usually the narrative, right? No one would ever look at me and say he's part of that system, or he's part of that group, or he's part of that community. It's, he comes and goes, but he's a functional user of that community. He has a purpose, an intent, a reason to be there, but other than that, I'm not hanging out to schmooze. Does that make sense?
Well, you're the most outgoing introvert I've ever met, because you are the weirdest combination of both, right? Where you enjoy your solitude, you like being by yourself, but given the opportunity, you love public speaking. You enjoy it. You do it very well. You like coming on these. You like putting yourself on the internet. But yet at the same time, you don't attach yourself to communities. It's such a weird, odd thing. Do you wish you stuck around more?
No, not at all. I think one of my copes is because I've suffered so greatly, and I'm not a victim here. I've made a lot of poor decisions as well, right? Which has created intense suffering in my life, in my past. But I think because of the amount of suffering and the amount of poor decisions and let's just say suffering in life, like I have a deep empathy for people. And it's a deep caring for people's, I'm going to use the word souls, but it's not as religious as it sounds. It's a, like, everybody's fucking broken. Like, everybody's fucking broken. And for anyone to say that they're not broken, you're just lying through your teeth. Right? You are broken, right? You are broken. And for me, I've always found that one of the best ways for me to cope, I can think maybe even with my own brokenness, my own insecurities, my own lack of perfection, these types of things, is always to let me help. Let me be helpful. And so I've spent a lot of my life educating myself to become helpful and useful. One of the most detrimental things that I can say to my children, which I've said in anger, which I wish I hadn't, but you'll say things to your daughter that you wish you hadn't. It just comes. The most detrimental thing and deleterious thing that I've ever said to my children is, don't be fucking useless. Now, you can see where this stems from. Abandonment, it stems from that. It stems from I can't rely on anyone. So guess what I have to be? I have to be the tradesmith for everything, right? I have to do everything. And it's not that I'm not willing to ask for help. I am when the time is right, but I can learn anything, Matt. Like I can do anything. Like I can go through my trials and tribulations of things that I've done. I've gotten 3 master's degrees, right? I don't know anyone else in my field that does that. I've published 3 books. I published my second book by John Wiley & Sons, which is the largest business publisher in the world. I was top 100 on Amazon in 2012. I have a national weightlifting record, right? Google me, right? I've learned how to drive cars and motorcycles in races, right? I have my racing license, right? Whatever I do, I try to not become the best at it. That's not possible. But to the best of my ability, become capable enough so that if anything comes up in that arena of life, then I don't have to rely on anybody else. And so you've said this to me before, like, you're always fucking working. That's just who I am. Like, I'm always trying to grow the next thing, always trying to build the next thing. I don't want to rely on anyone. Some people would consider that a character flaw, which puts blinders on. I get that. I understand that. But at the same time, the last thing that I'm going to do is ask anybody for help. I can learn anything. Right?
Do you think that's stems from a fear of abandonment or a fear of rejection? Because they're 2 different things.
No, rejection, I don't fear. It's the deeper manifestation of abandonment, and the fact that, like, your own flesh and blood, your parents, the ones that birthed you, threw you away. Like, it can't get any more raw than that, right? And I'm not the type to sit there and think on that and ruminate on it and let it affect me. But the reality is that leaves a soul scar, regardless of who you are. Your flesh and blood didn't want you. What does that say about you? And that is such a detrimental mental model for so many adoptees when they traverse that thought pattern and when they traverse those ideas, because you will never get the answer you're seeking. Why did you abandon me? Why did you leave me? Why did you throw me on the railroad tracks? I've heard hundreds of stories of other adoptees found in trash cans, found in subway systems, right? Found in the forest. Like these are not uncommon, right? And whenever an adoptee goes down that road, there's no good answer. You'll never get any good answer because it's only your brain telling your brain what you think you want or what you think should have happened. And so I think that leaves a huge gap in any adoptee's heart as to the genesis of their being, the inception of their being, the beginning of their entire life. They were a reject. They were not wanted. And that, regardless of how you try to paint over it or glaze over it or create flowery language or give rationale and reason as to why, at the end of the day, it's not something that you will ever be able to understand. I sat with my birth mom, and my Korean was good enough where we could have great conversations. But I tell you, when I asked her why, that was one of the most regretful questions I could have asked her, because her answer was not satisfying.
And nothing would have worked.
Exactly. Anyway. It's a trap. That question is a trap, because first off, it was 40 years ago, right, or whatever, how long it was. Second off, would never understand the context and situation of a 13, 14-year-old, timing's fuzzy, but 13, 14-year-old having kids, like, and the daddy is now in jail. Like, okay, so 14-year-old having 2 kids, daddy's in jail, only 16, 17, 18, whatever. How could I ever put myself in that position to a decision that would lead me to throwing my kids away? No mental gymnastics will ever get you to a resolution that is safe. And so when I asked my birth mother that question, I won't tell you the answer. It's very personal. But I will say that her answer was deeply saddening. It was deeply unfulfilling. And
you were under one. So she didn't actually know you. You didn't have a real personality yet. You weren't a real, I mean, you were a human, but not a fully functioning, coherent person. So it's not like she's like, I don't like this guy.
No.
Like she doesn't know.
No, frankly, I didn't press because the timing timing wasn't right. But I think if I had pressed, I probably would have made it worse. There are...
Do you regret asking?
Sometimes. Yeah, when I think about it. I haven't thought about it in years, frankly. This conversation is bringing these things out of me. But let's sit with you for a second. And sit with me for a second. What would it take for you to throw away Joel? The answer is you have no fucking idea.
Yeah.
You have no idea what type of worldly pressure, spiritual pressure, psychological pressure, familial pressure, peer pressure, all these multivariant entities coming into your system, and you have to make a decision to literally throw her away. Choose your poison on the train tracks, in a garbage can, subway system, forest, street. You, frankly, I'd actually go as far as to say that you cannot conceive of any good reason that would ever happen.
No.
You'd probably take her to the grave with you. Like,
yeah.
Right? Because you'd be like, bitch, I got this. Like, we're poor. We lost our house. We lost our car. Lost a job. Fucking everyone's trying to kill us. Like, I got you. We're running.
Let's go figure this out.
Exactly. And I've gone through that entire thought process myself. What would it take for those two kids that we just showed on the screen? What would it take for me to give them up? The answer is over my fucking dead body. And so because we lack so much context and so much situational understanding of these moments, sometimes there are questions that should never be asked. And it's not because they're not an option to be asked. It's just because it's like those movies where the old witch and the hag's looking at you and saying, you're going to go on this journey, but nothing you seek is there, right? That's exactly it. There's nothing you seek. You're trying to placate your own mental stability. You're trying to have this person who you could never conceive of going through the same decision she made or they made, the parents, throwing away their child. You're so far away from that, all you're doing is now being an asshole by bringing it up. All you're doing now is dig. There's a great saying that says that when you dig up the past, all you get is dirty. They're not wrong. Whenever you dig up, this is why I rarely dig up past, because there's nothing there. Past is not non-existent. It's not something to worry about. It's come and gone. And so I think most adoptees who, and I've talked with hundreds of them, most adoptees who traverse that path and try to find out their lineage and find out their origin story, they can sometimes become these super salty, just terrible human beings that live in Korea and dedicate their entire life to blocking adoption so that others don't go through what they went through. And it's like, well, brother, would you rather have them be adopted with a hole in their heart, or would you rather have them age out and die on the streets? Because the life expectancy of kids who age out of the orphanage isn't good.
Really?
Not good.
Do you regret going down your journey of finding your mom?
Not at all.
Is that something you recommend others to do?
I don't recommend it unless you have a particular tugging on your heart that it is important for you to make what I consider an eternal connection with your beginning. If you don't have it, I don't think you're missing out. But it's a Pandora's box because some parents don't want to be found, right? Especially in Korea and in shame-based, honor-based systems like Asia is. There was a lot of conversation with my private eye before we met and say, hey, look, bro, like, I know you're young, I know you're savvy, I know that you're gung-ho about this, but understand, if I find her, or find your parents, there could be the chance where they're like,
don't want to see him.
Don't want to see him. And you're going to have to be okay with that and still paying me $15,000, right, for the pleasure of doing business. Right?
Oh, what if you were one of the adoptees looking for your parents and they're like, we don't want to meet them? Then that must be even more crushing.
Then you get the double.
Yeah, because you go with you get that feeling twice.
You get the double L.
Oh,
bro, I've met adoptees who've gotten the double L. Dude, like you were rejected at 1 year old, and now that you're 29, you got rejected again by your same birth parents.
That's crushing. That's so crazy.
I'm gonna tell you, there's this one guy.
How do you recover from that?
I was about to tell you. There's one guy. I won't tell you his name. He didn't recover.
Really?
He went off the deep end. I think he lives in India now.
I mean, that must be...
He lost his shit.
Because early on, you can almost justify all these different scenarios of why it would have happened. But if you find out later in life that they still don't want to see you,
yeah, his name is his. I'll just tell you that his name is Ben, and he lost his shit because I met him when I was living in Korea, and because I was part of a lot of adoptee communities when I was out there, Gilpo type shit, foreigner type shit, and the problem is, so let's extrapolate out of this. Most men struggle with identity. And the reason why they struggle with identity is because their identity is wrapped up in what they do. And once what you do has been extracted from you, then your identity is lost. And then you go through depression. I understand this because I had my identity wrapped up in a startup that got extracted from me and put me in a spiral of depression for a while. So I get that. I understand it. For some, so it's an identity issue. For this guy, his entire identity was wrapped up in finding his origin story.
Had to know.
He had to. Like, he had spent, years doing this. I hired a private eye. He went the privateer. He's like, I'm going to learn Korean. I'm going to move to Korea. I'm going to fucking learn the shit. I'm going to do my own research, my own analysis, go to all the orphanages, go to all the, he did everything. I think it took him probably about 4.5 years, 5 years.
Of his own.
Privateering it all the way. And then when he finally got to heaven's doorstep, they were like, you're going to fuck up everything, bro. It's like, wait. What do you mean I'm going to fuck up everything? You have to understand, these parents, they have lives. They have kids that don't know that there is another brother around or sister around. There are relatives who are deeply shame-based. And if they find out that there was infidelity 40 years ago or 30 years ago, and you suddenly show up at your doorstep and be like, hey, I'm your long-lost son that was illegitimate, like, you could fuck up the entire family. So he went, I think, a little bit overzealous. And I think his communication, because he was, like, you ever hear the quote, don't ever tempt a desperate man? You don't want to ever tempt a desperate man because the desperate man will do anything. He was at that level. He was at desperation. And when he got the second L, the rejection, the second R, which is another loser, he lost his shit. Like, I didn't hear from him for like a couple months, and then the last thing I heard is he just fucking sold everything. He's living in India or something like that. He just lost his identity. He's like, no one loves me.
Because if you spend 4.5 years looking, traveling, digging, researching, interviewing, at a certain point, you convince yourself that they want to be found.
Exactly.
And when you find out that that was for nothing.
And they didn't give a fuck about you for decades.
Wow.
And then you suddenly show up with all this hard work and saying, hey, I did all this work. And they're like, we don't care.
Because he thought he might get a, I love you, I miss you, a pat on the back.
Yeah, like, you're alive. Like, oh my gosh.
Something.
Bring you back in the fold. Like, no. It was like, bro.
That's so tough.
I mean, it's your parents.
Yeah.
That kin thing, that kin dynamic, that kin dynamic is so small, but it's so heavy on an adoptee's mind and soul.
And isn't that the biggest fear? Is that you go down this journey, you try to find out, and then you run into this.
Oh, yeah.
That has to be
I could tell you stories for days. My story was a good story because, and I think it's just luck of the draw and the luck of my mom, who was open to it and met with the private eye and was like, oh, they're still alive, was her first statement. They're still alive. And he was like, yeah. And we got one of them who's been hired me to look for you. Are you interested in meeting? And her answer, from what he told me, her answer was absolutely, as long as it's safe. Right? Because her two brothers didn't even know she was pregnant, 13, 14, whatever. And she had this baby out of wedlock. And, you know, I think she dumped us like when we were probably like 2 months old or something like that. So there was, and trying to keep a baby away, trying to keep a pregnancy away from your Korean family.
Not easy.
It's not easy. So I think
they send you to the farm.
Oh yeah. I think she didn't communicate this effectively to me, so I'm not 100% sure. But I think she essentially excommunicated herself for a while. Like when she got pregnant, she was like, fuck. So she just like pieced out or did something. Or, I mean, for a good year, at least a good year, she was off the map. And then she came back and they were just like, okay, well, you're back. What happened to your boyfriend or whatever? Oh, he's in jail. We were just trying to figure something out and it didn't work out. Life goes on. She remarried 2 years. My birth mother's story is like just so, like I love her so much. I love my birth mother so much because of the suffering that she went through. So after she had given up my brother and I, and her boyfriend was now in jail doing time, she had married a guy 2.5 years later, like on her 18th birthday or right before her 18th birthday. She married a guy. Then she had 2 kids with him, 2 sons with him, who are my half brothers. And then he died of cancer 3 years after they were born. And so she had to raise these 2 kids on her own anyway, which is fascinating because there was one moment in our conversation. We had many conversations over months and months, and years now, but she considers it God's fate in God's balance in her life. And what she means by that is she had 2 that she gave up. And God said, you fucked up. I'm interpreting here. You fucked up. So we're going to give you another chance.
Second try. And now you have to raise these 2 kids without a husband anyway, because now he's dead. So either you're going to choose the one that's in jail or you're going to choose the one that's dead. You still fucked up. You still ended up with 2 boys. And now she has 4 boys, right? 2 from the first and 2 from the second. And so she communicated that to me as her lot. This is what she gets, which can sound depressing, but I think for her, it was like this universal understanding. Like, I can't get out of this narrative. This narrative is exactly my lot in life. I had 2 kids. It was my first chance. I chucked them away. Guess what, fuckstick? You're going to have 2 anyway. This is your job.
Yeah.
That's what you're supposed to do.
And so she runs a small 식당, a small restaurant, like a total hole in the wall. It's one of those 식당s where there's 4 seats. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
It's like that's all there is. But those 4 seats are always filled with regulars. So I love her because she lives such a humble life. And I think one of the most magical moments of my life is just like a Korean drama. When I was living in Korea, there's a lot of Korean drama stuff there. But walking up to her 식당, I could almost hear K-drama music. You know?
Like the melodramatic, like ballady.
Yeah, and the filter is
flowers.
It's all like bright but a little bit blurry as you go up to the 식당.
Yeah.
And she's in the back cooking up and there's regulars all. I mean, like totally. I had several moments going to that 식당 and restaurant, and I literally felt like I was in a Korean drama movie. It's cool.
So I got kind of a final question then, because I'm curious. Would you ever adopt?
So we thought about it. My wife and I thought about it deeply because I'm a product of adoption, and I'm a successful product of adoption. And we decided that for our family, that we would keep it as something that's always open, but not something that we would execute upon just yet. My 2 natural-born kids are the love of my life. They keep me busy. So I'm going to stay there. We could talk about this. I won't go long on it, but I'm officially recognized in Korea. So I have a unique visa in Korea because not only am I an adoptee, but I also went back, learned the language, lived there for a while. So I became like a Mapo district in Seoul resident, so I can go there tax free. It's really funky, and I can live there and I can work there. And I don't remember all the visa stuff, but I spent a lot of time supporting the adoption community, becoming a liaison and essentially an ambassador for a couple of congressional policies around adoption. I was up on the Hill a couple times speaking at some conferences, no big deal. But I spent a lot of time in the adoption world. I understand it a lot from a legal standpoint, from a legislation standpoint. I defended it for a while. So I was really deep in that world because I've always felt like I should give back to that. But long story short is once I became a father, once I became a dad, that stuff kind of dropped off. And so it's one of those things that's on the table, but I mean, I'd have to execute relatively quickly to make it happen.
We've thought about it too. You know, it took us a long time to have our kid. And we thought for the longest time, if it doesn't happen for us, we're going to adopt because, you know, we want to raise children. And now that we have a daughter and hopefully we'll have another one, it's something that we've always considered. I think if we're ever in a position to do so, it's something we want to do, just because we know how difficult it was for us and how much we enjoy being parents. And if we have the opportunity to help somebody else, I think it's one of the most selfless things you can do, you know, to not only for yourself, but to help other people. So it's something that I've considered. We've talked about a lot, and we're...
What? You don't want to adopt black boys like Charlize Theron and turn them into girls?
Do you know what? We actually thought, hey, if we adopt someone, we should adopt someone from Africa. We've actually had that conversation too.
So you want to adopt black boys and then turn them into girls?
I don't want to turn them into girls.
Okay.
But, you know, but we've considered that we would
it's
adopt...
It's a bad joke considering the context, but it's true. She's fucking them up.
Yeah, yeah.
She's a bad example.
Yes.
She's a bad example.
But there's people that have done a great job.
Yes.
You know, and if you care... I don't know. It's something that we've considered. So here's a question.
If you were to adopt, would you adopt Korean or would you adopt?
No, that's what I'm saying. We would probably adopt from maybe a different country.
Dude, I don't want to go I don't want to go too long in this thread, but I'll tell you, I have talked to so many black people who are adamant against that.
Really?
Oh yeah. And they'll look at you straight in the eye, Matt, and they say, "You can't teach black culture. So you do not have the right." Like, I've literally had these conversations more than I'd like with different people on different sides of the aisle, from Honduras to Africa to Asia to obviously Latin America, and everyone has different opinions.
Yeah.
Everyone. But I'll tell you, there is a very powerful consensus from those in the foster care system and adoption system, and they're black, and there's a lot of common sentiment in that black adoption foster care system community, where they will look at you, Matt, they'll look at me, they'll look at white Joe, and they'll say, you guys should never adopt a black baby. Y'all can't teach black culture. Y'all fucking them up. And
never even thought about that. And it makes so much sense that there would be a pushback.
Yeah.
Never even crossed my mind.
Right. And some of them have even taken me to task in these conversations. And they'll like, so who are you raised by? White people? I was like, yep. They're like, well, didn't they fuck you up? It's like, well, bro, why are you being so aggressive?
Yeah. Like, you don't have to.
You don't have to be
so
this
unnecessary.
way. Yeah, you don't have to be this way. Like, they're like, well, clearly you speak like a whitey. It's like, bro, now you're just this ad hominems attacks. Like get over your fucking self. Like, let's have a conversation here. For me, the bottom line is very simple. Orphanage life is fucking horrible. Period, full stop. I was an orphan. When the average orphan in Korea at the time was one social care worker, one social worker to up to 30 kids. You know this as much as I do now that you're a father. Kids need skin-to-skin time. They need mommy time. They need daddy time. When you're sitting there and all you're doing is laying around looking up the fucking ceiling because your care worker doesn't have time but all of about 2 minutes to give you a hug and then put you down and roll you over so your head doesn't get flat. By the way, the reason my head's flat is because they said that they didn't roll me over. I was one of the less cared for in that orphanage. So they never rolled me over. So that's why I have this flat head.
You're also probably the big baby.
I don't know. But that skin-to-skin time, that parental time, that if you're a brand new 2-week-old, 3-week-old baby and you have no social engagement, that's going to fuck up your psychology for the rest of your life. And so I give you all this context to say, orphanage, which is fucking horrible, age out, but probably die on the streets, or get adopted by a race that's not your own. And to the hardcore individuals out there, they would say it's better to leave them in the orphanage, which I find to be not a good answer.
I mean, when we first looked into it, and I didn't go that deep, but we looked into it. We did a little bit of research. We had a couple of conversations. And basically, they were like, look, if you want a white baby, you're on a waiting list. Right? They're in high demand. It's crazy, but they're very blunt when they tell you these things. If you want a white baby, it's going to take a long time.
Yeah.
If you want anything other than, you can have them quicker.
Yeah.
I'm like, what are we talking about here?
Different races have different values.
This baby is considered more valuable and you can pay more. And that's what really made us pause. because I didn't want to have that. It was too real it was too real of a conversation to have.
I understand
our
exactly
situation.
what you say. I understand exactly what you mean.
We didn't want to have this conversation.
It's too real too soon.
I didn't want to put value on babies based on race. I didn't want to at all. And when they were doing that, I was like, this is fucking crazy. I can't believe. And it's not like they're coy about it. Because for a lot of people, especially now, it's very transactional. And I just, it was really tough for me.
Bro,
I couldn't do it.
There was a point, maybe.
And then now that you're saying, if you take one that maybe less people want, and then they're going to judge you for doing it, like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
That's crazy too.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I used to have a rate card. I used to have a rate card from the late 80s. I think it was from like 1988, 1989. It was a rate card on adoptions. It was like Asian things have changed now, but like you could go on this rate card was 30, 40 countries, and you could just see how expensive the babies were. And let me go into a really dark permutation, but I won't stay there long. Even darker permutation is when I've stepped into the world of human trafficking
and then they're for sale.
Orphanages. Bro, it is just as dark and terrible a world as you can imagine.
I don't even, that's too dark. From where we are, that's like too dark. I don't know if my brain can handle it right now.
Yeah, I mean, there's very, the last thing I'll say, there was a lot of strong evidence that a lot of that was happening right after the Korean War.
Yeah.
And I was, let's just say, one of the few that was actually fortunate that I wasn't trafficked, because there were white men coming into Korea after the Korean War and completely exploiting all the lost generation of kids. Think about this. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of kids under 18 displaced.
Yeah.
No family. Their parents are dead in the war. They're somewhere, like, what do you do with these? I'll leave that the way it is. Yep.
If you could give maybe a final word of advice, or if you could speak to people that maybe have stuck around this long, that may relate to this a little bit more than others. Maybe they themselves were adoptee, or they're going through the process of adoption. If you can kind of give one word to them.
Well, I think if you're an adoptee or you're in the world of adoption and you have you have been given a second chance that most haven't, and that are in the orphanage world or the foster care world. And for me, as someone who is a man of faith, I always consider myself doubly blessed. So Jesus was adopted by Mary and Joseph, right? Moses from the Bible was adopted by. There are other examples of adoption. And if we go to the faith and religious parts of the Bible, then those who are accepted by God are also adopted. And so I consider myself doubly adopted. Most people, if you're a Christian, you're adopted once. You had a parent, you were raised, and you're adopted by God. Now you're you're grafting into the tree. I was adopted twice. I was adopted by my Caucasian parents, who were middle class Americans. My dad currently, today, works at a hospital making $12.75 an hour. That's how middle America he is. Paying that much money for me and back in the day was a world of hurt for them to make that happen. So I was adopted twice. So for those who are out there in the adoption world and you're a Christian or you're into that faith, then consider yourself doubly blessed, because that's the way that I look at it.
Thank you for sharing today.
I didn't think I was going to go here today.
I know, but I think it's awesome. I think people get a real understanding of who you are. And I learned so much. I think it was so cool. Thank you for doing that.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone. See you next week.
See you guys. All right, you got it out of me, man.
Bro, that was fantastic.
Really?
Yeah. Dude, I almost fucking cried. I mean,